All right.
All right. Well, good evening, sorors, and welcome tonight to our webinar. So you want to run for office. We're going to go over a few things, a part of our agenda. First, some housekeeping, then we'll have a word of prayer introduction, and then we'll go right into our webinar. All right. So let's move to the next slide, please. All right, so some of the housekeeping activities. The first thing, if you are attending tonight's webinar, I want to make sure that you are getting given credit for your attendance. So please send me your name via the chat message or email me at joleneH@hotmail.com or drjolenehware@gmail.com. Some of the brief webinars, do's and don'ts that we want to review tonight include, please turn off your microphones, okay? Most likely the host will mute all microphones once I'm done with the administrative slides, okay? Please use the chat feature to send any questions or comments or concerns that you may have. Also, please, this is an important one, please do not share your screen during the presentation or webinar this evening. At this time, we'll have a word of prayer, and then we'll go into our presentation. Let us pray. Most Heavenly and Gracious Father, we just say thank you for this day. For this is the day that you have made. We're going to rejoice and be glad in it, Jesus. Lord, we pray right now for all those sorors who have come out tonight to learn and to grow, Lord. And thank you, Lord, for the leadership of this organization, Lord. We thank you for the leader of our chapter, Lord, Sir Erica. And we thank you even for Sir Tiffany tonight, Lord, for blessing her to be able to come tonight and present this webinar, Lord. We just pray that you just bless her, give her the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to be able to impart wisdom into our lives, Lord. We just pray for all the sorors who are on their way to be a part of this webinar, that they may make it home safely and sound, Lord. And we just thank you right now for giving us the guidance, leadership, and direction, Lord, to want to pursue, Lord, and be more of a servant, Lord, a servant leader. So we thank you tonight, and we be so careful to give you all the glory, the honor, and the praise. In Jesus' name we do pray, and to God be the glory. At this time, I will present to you our PTO University webinar series, and the webinar for tonight is Servant Leadership. So you want to run for office, presented by our very own Soror Tiffany Moore Russell. And with that being said, I will now pass it over to Tiffany. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Joylene, and thank you, everyone, this evening for joining our webinar and for your interest in the topic for tonight. This is just a brief rundown of our outline for this evening, and of course, it's why you should run, conducting a self-evaluation, office or job descriptions, and going to the nominations and elections process. So the first thing is, why should you run, sorors? And I think the first thing we have to understand is that our sorority is unable to function without elected leadership. We have to have members that are willing to serve in leadership roles, whether that's taking the minutes, whether that's checking the mailbox, capturing our money. All of us have a role, and in order for those roles to be fulfilled, the sorority cannot function. And we have these roles being fulfilled in our chapter level, on our regional level, and on our international level. And so that's the first thing, is why should you run, right? And we think about when we bring in new members, we don't bring in new members just because they want to be members, but we also bring them in to perpetuate our organization, to provide service. But we can't provide service if we don't have a functioning and operating chapter and sorority as a whole. Our membership is rich in various talents and gifts, and so therefore we should tap into those, and you should share those gifts and talents. And the sorority has needs. It's important for the membership to fulfill those needs. And so I want to leave with you all is service is the price we pay for our rent on earth. So what does that mean? You know, we say service to all mankind, and of course in our region we like to say we are the significant. But how are we significant unless we are serving and providing our time and talents to our chapters, which will then elevate our sorority in the community. So that's the first question when we think about why should we run, right? Oftentimes I think many of our members sit in the back of the room and look for somebody else. Oftentimes we wait for somebody else to raise their hand, and we say, oh, well, somebody else will do it. But and I don't know if you all remember, I've gone to several leadership trainings where it's always that exercise that say, well, somebody else will do it. Well, if everybody thought that and said, well, somebody else was going to do it, it ended up nobody's doing it. And so we all have to stop and just kind of reflect on why we should run. So the second thing, and we decide why we want to run, is we need to conduct a self-evaluation. I'm a big believer in conducting a SWOT analysis of ourselves. What are your strengths as a member, right? So your strengths could be you are someone who gives great public presentations, or you are a very good writer. But your weakness could be you don't like speaking in public, right? So I think it's important that we all, when we think about running and serving in an elected position in our chapter, is conduct a self-evaluation of yourself, right? What are your strengths? And write those down. And it's always, I think, it's always also good to do a 360 evaluation. Ask a couple of your friends to evaluate you as well, and to evaluate you as a leader or someone that's seen you serve or work with you. So first you want to identify what are your strengths, and then what are your weaknesses, and then what are your opportunities where you can grow. So what do we think about what are our opportunities? So let's say we have somebody new to our sorority because they just only been initiated for 2 years, but they are a CPA. So they have financial experience. They are very good with banking. They understand the money, but they've only been in the sorority for 2 years. So the opportunity for them would be is I have a desire one day to be Tammy Yokas, but I think I need to go to some training. So I think I need to understand Alpha Kappa Alpha financing or Alpha Kappa Alpha funding structure and how we function with our money. And then, of course, what are the potential threats? And what could a threat be? It could be your job. It could be your family. Does your job require you to travel? And so if your job requires you to travel 5 days out of the week, should you be seeking the position of Tammy Yokas? Those are the kind of things that members should be thinking about. So that's why I think we should, when we conduct our self-evaluation, is to conduct a SWOT analysis. And then the next step is to establish your personal sorority goals. What is it that you hope to achieve throughout your membership or your tenure in Alpha Kappa Alpha? Well, we're a pretty young chapter, and so I don't think anyone should be sprinting to try to get to bachelors. We have 17 officers, 17 positions, so there's a lot of opportunity to grow and to set your goals. So if your goal is in 15 years you want to be bachelors, that's wonderful. Then how do you set your path so that you can get there one day? And so your first step is you came here to the webinar to find out what are the roles and responsibilities, how do you get there. And then have you met the minimum requirements when you look at your self-evaluation? So if somebody on this call tonight have decided they're going to submit their candidate application to me for this upcoming election, have you looked at the minimum requirements? Have you determined that you are eligible? Have you looked at your points and your qualifications to see that you meet the job description and the requirements for that position? And so that's what I think is important when you decide you want to run for office, is you got to conduct a self-evaluation and see where you are. Are you an officer in another organization? Are you an officer in your church? How much time do you have? Because one of the things that I've learned, and we have our bachelors on the call, is that when you're an officer, you really don't take a break from the sorority. We like to say we're off for July and August, but officers really don't take a break. So are you really ready to give 12 months? Are you really committed to checking your email around the clock? And so those are the kind of things that I think it's important for us individually to ask ourselves. So before I go on, let me stop and see if there are any questions. And no one is muted at this time. So if there's any questions, you can go ahead and start asking your questions. Okay. No one has their hand up, so no one has questions. Okay. So Okay, never mind. Give me a minute, sir. I don't know why it's not advancing.
So, Tiffany,
Yes.
this is Sarah Erica. I think I would just like to add to that is when you talk about opportunities, if someone's new to the chapter, haven't been in very long, whether they transferred or new initiate, and you spoke of Tamiokas, then there is an opportunity for them to join the budget committee. There's an opportunity for them to volunteer to assist. Maybe, they may not be on the audit committee, but they might be able to say, hey, I will be willing to serve on the audit committee. They could take some trainings at the different conferences. So there are opportunities to help in those areas to prepare for getting to that point and understanding what's entailed.
And that's a very great point. So I'm sorry, Erica, and she's absolutely correct. And if you look at the chapter bylaws for South State Omega, and I will tell you a good and at the end I'm going to share everyone some good resources. But one of them is our own bylaws. And it tells you what some positions are also chairman of certain committees. And so if you say one day, I have a desire to be the holigus, or to be the phylacter, you join some of those committees to see what the job responsibility entails. Because oftentimes reading about a job or talking to somebody is different than actually being around that person to see how the job is actually fulfilled. I'm certain Erica can tell you, thinking about being the bachelor's is different than being the bachelor's until you're actually the bachelor's. And you're faced with decisions that you saw from the audience, or you even saw from the dais and other roles that are not your responsibility. And so that is a very good point. It's attending conferences, and we're going to later on in the presentation we're going to talk about mapping out your course. And that's part of your AKA plan. So one of the things I want to do is walk through the various. Any other questions before I go into the next phase, going through our chapter officer requirements? All right, so the first thing I want to share with you is that when we think about this generation of leaders, is that there are some qualifications or some characteristics that we should be seeking. And it should be someone with integrity, who is trustworthy, honest, and is very candid. The leaders that we need in the future of our chapter are someone who will foster collaboration, involve others in the process, create an atmosphere of trust and respect, and also empower others. I can tell you as a former bachelor's that you cannot do this job without other members. You need other members to fill the vision, to execute the vision, and to cultivate our chapter as well as serve and provide the community. So leaders, as you're thinking about serving, you have to think it's important to make sure that you foster collaboration, involve others, engage others, and empower others so that we can all serve. It's kind of like when I think about the church. The pastor cannot also be over the offering. He can't be being the usher. He can't be the parking lot ministry. So everybody has a role, and everybody must fulfill their role in order for the kingdom to provide its service to those who come to church. So I'm going to now transition and talk about the various officer requirements and what, give you some recommendations. And, of course, Erica, if you can weigh in as well, because you served in several of these positions. So the first position, of course, is our bachelor's. And, of course, that position is not up for election this coming November, but we may have someone on the call that says, I would like to be bachelor's one day. And this is for people who may want to run now or even in the future. And I'm not going to read to you, but the bachelor's is the person who is the overseer or the executive of our chapter. She sets the vision. She sets the direction of what she wants to see this chapter go under her administration. At South State Omega, we've had each bachelor's has had a theme, and that theme kind of drives where they want to go under their administration. The bachelor's has to be someone who is a big picture, who is strategic, who has to be a good manager of people. So if you don't like managing personalities, I don't think you want to run for bachelor's, right? I don't know if, Erica, you want to give me an amen. But
amen.
The bachelor's it's like the quarterback. It's looking to see where the needs are, where the voids, how to fill the responsibilities. The bachelor's is the person who is communicating with the regional director, with the corporate office, what are our requirements, the expectations, and making sure we fulfill those expectations, as well as clarifying them for members of the chapter. The bachelor's, and just so you all know, has to be a member of the chapter for at least 3 years. That's a minimum. The bachelor's is the ex officio member of mostly all committees. But typically, the most bachelors is not going to attend every committee, but you should know what's going on. You should be aware of what's happening in the chapter so that you can then report effectively to the sorority. Typically, the bachelors has attended any meetings that the regional director holds at conferences. Typically, the bachelor is encouraged to greet or meet the regional director or any international officer that may come to our city. That person is a representative of our chapter. She is the face of our chapter. She is our leader, and that's the role of the bachelor. Typically, the bachelor should understand and have a full working knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order. If you're ever interested in being the bachelor's or even the first or second anti, and personally I think every officer should know Robert's Rules or have a copy of Robert's Rules in your possession. If not, get the short abridged version. But every member should be responsible for understanding how the meeting should be run and understanding Robert's Rules. That's very important for pretty much anybody because you should also be using Robert's Rules in your committee meeting. So that's one I would encourage anybody interested in leadership. The workshops I would recommend if you want to be bachelor's is you should understand financing. You should attend the bachelor certification, which is usually offered at the regional conference or the boule or leadership, because that will go over all the responsibilities, and I don't think it would hurt to even do it ahead of time before you actually want to run, so you have an idea of what should be expected of you. Protocol is a good manual that the bachelor should always have at her disposal, because bachelors should know the protocol of the sorority so that members can follow her. Of course, our chapter bylaws and our chapter standard operating procedures, of course, should be at the right hand of the bachelors, as well as chapter operations. That's a very good workshop that a bachelor's or even the first or second should attend. So that's just a recap. Bachelors should be attending cluster conferences. The bachelor's is usually representing the chapter at the cluster, the regional, the boule, and the leadership. Typically, Psi Theta Omega in the past has always provided a stipend. It has now been that way for all the past bachelors, where they've received some form of stipend. Typically, it has covered most of their expenses to attend the boule and the leadership and the regional conference. Also, the bachelor's dues is waived. The only thing the bachelor's pays during her tenure is per capita and EAF. Are there any questions about the role of the bachelor's? Okay. Let me see if I'm checking to see if anybody has their hands up, so just so y'all know. Okay. The next role is the first anti-bachelor's, and in our chapter, the first anti-bachelor's is also the chairman of the program committee. The first anti-bachelor's is someone who should be learning from the bachelor's. Now, in Psi Theta Omega, we do not have automatic ascension. That person does not automatically become the bachelor's. That person must run. The reason why Psi Theta Omega created that is because we didn't want to assume that just because someone wanted to be first anti, they automatically want to be bachelor's. So that person would have to run for bachelor's. Some chapters, that person is automatically the bachelor's, but not in our chapter. The first anti-bachelor's oversees and makes sure that we properly and effectively execute the international programs. That person also serves, the bachelor's and the first and the second serve, everybody actually on this first slide serves 2-year terms, just so everybody knows. So they serve. So none of these people actually, there's 2 that will be on the ballot in November, but they serve 2-year terms. And the first anti is encouraged per our bylaws to preside over at least 2 meetings a year, and to work closely with the bachelor's because she's our first backup. If the bachelor's is unable to attend the meeting, the first anti is supposed to step into her place to lead. So that's the first anti. The first anti you all know is Latanya Stark. And she oversees all the programs, making sure that we are functioning and operating per our international program guide. Same thing. First anti should be going to the same things the bachelor's is going to. The first anti should be attending at minimum the cluster regional conference, attending the workshops for program. Also should be participating in any conference calls that the representative for the program committee offers to make sure that we're abreast of what our goals are. That's another good thing that this first anti should be participating in. We are in a new administration. So certain our bachelors will create some type of open house to kind of talk about the new administration's program and let the new program chairman determine how she will move forward. But I'm certain that if you're interested in our programs and how they function, that's a good place to start, attending those workshops. The manual for programs is always purchased. You can be purchased at the regional conference or even on our corporate website. So we have numerous guides and documents that members can purchase for their own use. The only one that you are not allowed to purchase, and that's the ritual manual. You are not allowed to purchase the rituals. Only the bachelor's has that at her, it belongs to the chapter, but she has it in her possession. Second anti-bachelor's, same thing, should be attending conferences, should also know Robert's rules, but the second anti is also the chairman of our standards committee. It was the background for the chapter to make sure that as you begin to move up, and we are making some huge assumptions that if somebody is second, that they're going to move to first ambassadors, they should understand how the chapter should be functioning. And the standards committee looks at our operations, making sure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing as a chapter, and they also oversee any audits of our storage, making sure we comply with any chapter audits. Any questions before I move on to Tamiokas? Okay? And again, the second anti should step in if the first anti is not available. So, again, these two individuals are the backup to the bachelors. Oftentimes they should be collaborating and talking and supporting the vision of the bachelors and making sure the chapter is successful. So let's go into our Tamiokas and anti-Tamiokas. I have an asterisk by the anti-Tamiokas. The anti-Tamiokas is actually up for election on this November ballot. So Tamiokas handles our money. We all know that, right? She receives a lot of money that is given to her from the petunias grammages. She makes those deposits and she writes checks for the chapter. But she also has to make sure that we are submitting, making sure she's tracking our money. Are we staying within our budget? Are we adequately funded? She also chairs the budget committee. That's what the Tamiokas does. If you are interested in being a Tamiokas, I encourage you to go to the financial certification that is offered by the sorority, as well as many workshops as you can on the financial fitness, understanding the chapter financials. Various workshops will be offered at Boulay and the regional conference to get a good grasp of what's expected of a Tamiokas. The Tamiokas is bonded. No checks in our chapter can be signed without the Tamiokas and the bachelor's signature, so it requires 2 signatures. The Tamiokas has to also know what's going on with our committees and what money we have available, because you all know in our meetings we get requests for money, and people ask, do we have enough money for this? So the Tamiokas has to stay on top of making sure, are we where we're supposed to be and do we have what we need? And then the anti-Tamiokas is a supporter to the Tamiokas. This person, our Robin is not seeking re-election, so that's an open seat. And that person is the backup to the Tamiokas. Typically, they're there in the back of the room helping the Tamiokas write checks, maintain the chapter ledger, to make sure we're accurate and keeping up with where our balances are, but just pretty much to support the Tamiokas. It is meant to be a backup for the Tamiokas because we recognize that people have jobs. Thank you, Erica. The first anti can sign checks as well. Thank you, Erica. So the anti is there as a backup because we are busy, we all have jobs, and things come up. And so in case the Tamiokas has to go out of town, the anti is her backup. And so if anyone who is seeking the role of anti has to realize that that is not a 10-month job, it's actually around the clock, 12 months out the year, because money comes in throughout the entire summer. And so you have to be able to handle those duties and support the Tamiokas. Okay? All right, we're going to move to grammages and anti-grammages. Of course, we all know the grammages captures our minutes, and that person has to be able to listen, pay attention to what's going on in the chapter meeting, keep accurate records. She is the one person who is keeping record of what happens in our meetings because we must bind our minutes and make sure that we keep them in our archive. So the grammages has to be able to know what's going on, be able to pay attention to the bachelors and how the meeting is running. She can capture who makes motions, what's the result of that motion. So the grammatist is someone who has to be very good, timely with returning the minutes. You're very good with detail, and pretty organized, I would say. You really don't want someone, I would say that person has to be good with deadlines, very good with making sure she communicates to the chapter, and all those things. She is someone who is eligible to sign vouchers, the grammatist. So that's, the grammatist. The anti-grammatist is someone who supports the meetings at executive committee and is capturing those minutes at the executive committee meeting. So the anti-grammatist must be available on that Monday night for e-board to capture those minutes so we have an accurate record of what's happening at our executive committee meeting minutes, at our executive committee meetings. So are there any questions? And those also are 2-year terms. Okay. So Renita said, do they have special trainings? Uh-oh, I lost. Let me open up that chat. Do they have special trainings at conferences as well? So there are not special trainings for the grammatists or the anti-grammatists, but they do have workshops on capturing effective chapter minutes. So there are very detailed workshops that kind of, there's a workshop on being an effective Ivy League reporter, public relations workshops. So there are workshops that are tailored to several positions. And grammatist is one because, again, the grammatist is very important because the grammatist is capturing what is happening in the chapter. So there are not necessarily trainings, but there are workshops that are offered for various positions within the sorority. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. So the next slide, we're going to go with our Hodicus. And that person is up for up for election. That's a 1-year term position. The Hodicus, that's why there's a star by it. The Hodicus' job, of course, we know, is to receive, introduce, and keep record of any sorors who are visiting, as well as our guests. The Hodicus is also that person who obtains and presents appropriate gifts and courtesies in a timely manner. So if you all see emails from Sarah Tiffany Hughes, so if someone passes away or someone gets married or have a baby, SARS are encouraged to share that information with the Hodicus, and the Hodicus will then check with that SAR to see what type of courtesy they may need and how this sorority can be of support to them. And the Hodicus also chairs the hospitality committee to make sure that for our chapter meetings we are properly hostessing our sorors who come to the chapter meeting. And the Hodicus is someone who serves on the protocol committee because the Hodicus will oftentimes be tapped. So if Sarah Glenda Glover comes to town next month, Madam Bastos is going to call Tiffany as well as her protocol chairman to figure out how to best welcome her and provide a proper courtesy for her because she is in town, and that is what is expected of us. So the Hodicus has to be someone. And I know our current Hodicus partners a lot with our chaplain because, as we all know, life happens and sorors have had emergencies or personal challenges with their families, and so they've come to partner a lot together to make sure that we can be able to support. And so this is, I would call that person, the Hodicus is someone who has to be not necessarily at the beck and call of the sorority, but someone who can be there to, whether it's provide to talk to someone, send a card, think of very good gifts that you can give as a good courtesy. That's what the Hodicus has to think about. And the Hodicus does have to watch their budget as well because go ahead. Sorry, Erica.
Well, I was just going to add about how under this administration, I've been asking the chaplain to get more involved with the Hodicus courtesies related to illnesses and different kind of prayer requests and things like that. So we decided it would be good to let them partner more, but you actually began to say that. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks.
So, thank you. So we're going to move on to phylacter. The phylacter position is also a one-year term and is up in this November election. The phylacter is the official doorkeeper. We all remember from our intake days, the sentinel. But she's responsible for guarding the door. That means checking to make sure those who enter should be entering. That means are they members of the sorority? If they're guests, checking for validation, proof that they are a member. The keeper of the door is kind of also, that person has to have a very welcoming demeanor. It's kind of like at the church. I'm going to go back to the church. God forbid you have somebody at the front, as soon as you walk in the church with a resting bee face, that ain't what you want get visitors to come to the church to see. It's the same thing with our chapter. You want someone who is welcoming, who is warm, who is kind. So that's the first person that our visiting sorors will meet. That is the first person that our guests will meet, is the person sitting at that desk when they walk in the door. So if you're interested in being a phylacter, you also have to keep track of who attended the meetings and report that on a monthly basis. If we should have an intake of any type of ritual, you have to make sure people are dressed accordingly, or they should not be allowed in the room, because, again, you are the keeper at the door. If they started late, you should make sure they abide by whatever the bachelors has said, whether they can or cannot enter. So you also must be kind and friendly, but stern. Stern in a nice way, right? And sometimes you may have to say no. So if I would say if the phylacter is a great way to meet new sorors, because you're the first one they meet, they sign in, and you're putting names with faces. I think the phylacter is a great position to get started in the chapter and to start your service in the sorority. The member at large.
Sorry, Tiffany, before you go on, another thing that we're doing with the phylacter is we have the phylacter, but I actually have asked the phylacter to identify a couple people that can assist, so that if she needs to step away from the door, or if she needs something special done, or if, like Sarah Stephanie helps a lot with coming to let us know if we have quorum. So that's a good, even though you might not be phylacter, but you're interested in it, you could always volunteer to help at that back table and help with those duties, so that and also be a backup person if the phylacter is unable to attend the meeting.
That's a great point, and I want to press that, and I'm thankful that people on the call who may just be interested, because all of us have lives, and so we all need backups, right? God forbid we want to tell a soror she can't go on vacation, so she got to be at sorority meeting. That even goes to the bachelors. People should be able to take a break, and so that's why we've built in opportunities for backups. For some of these positions, we don't have an anti-phylacter, so it's good that sorors have been willing to support, sit at the table, and learn from the current officers to be able to support to them. Because you're right, Erica, to have a backup. If that person also chairs a committee, they may have to report. So who's going to be at the front welcoming our guests and visitors? So, again, if you're interested in being a phylacter, I encourage you to talk to our current phylacter, sit in the back of the room, and see what it's all about, and whether that is something. Now, the phylacter also may be tapped to keep some, decorum in the back. We like to come in the back and to socialize and have full-fledged conversations in the back, and that noise tends to travel and becomes a distraction. So sometimes, it's important that even officers, if that may not be their job duty, but to also help out to keep the meeting smooth and keep conversation down. So the phylacter is a great person in the back to track that and, make sure we can understand what's going on in the back. So member at large. The member at large is also a one-year term. It is up in November. And this person is supposed to be the liaison between the membership and the executive board. This person is supposed to be discreet and to be a sounding board for the chapter. Now, this person, and let me give some examples of a potential opportunity to take them to the member at large. If someone has given a report and they felt that sorors were harsh in how they handled their presentation, that person should be encouraged to go to the member at large to express themselves, so that the bachelors would then know how to better equip, either offer more training or position it where that sorrow would be successful in giving her report. So, but remember, that sometimes people may not want to come to the basket for someone who may have offended them, but that's what the role of the member at large is for, to be a voice, a sounding board to vent about what's happening in the chapter. That's what a member at large should be there for. That is their role. All right. The epistolist, of course, is also a one-year term, and it is up in November. I have, just so everyone knows, I have received an application for a candidate, so it's full transparency, but it is up, and we do have open elections in South Bend, Omega, so I'm not saying that to discourage anybody. But the epistolist is supposed to prepare correspondence as directed by the basilisk. She shall notify the members of regular meetings and read a report on all correspondence at chapter and executive board meetings. I will tell you now, in this new age of technology, I don't even know if our basilisk even asked the epistolist to communicate. Because we just send out emails now. I think, we were in a day back in the day when we used a phone tree or we mailed sorrows. Well, that's not, where we are today in 2018. But the main job of our epistolist is she checks the mailbox on a regular basis to make sure she's capturing what mail comes to the chapter, and she's constantly coordinating with the basilisk as far as who gets what mail, whether it's bank statements or money or correspondence from the regional director of the corporate office. She shall record minutes in the absence of the grammatus and anti-grammatus. We have not had to do this, but that is in our bylaws. And the epistolist is supposed to read the announcements during the chapter meeting, as well as assist the Ivy Leaf reporter with chapter communications. So I've pulled that right out of our bylaws. So let me say something about preparing correspondence as directed by the basilisk. I want to talk about that because although the current basilisk may or may not be using that, it doesn't mean that's not that person's job responsibility. So oftentimes, so I would say anybody who is going to be an epistolist should be a good writer. Should think about how to write letters. Like, for example, say the chapter votes to do a letter of endorsement for someone on behalf of the basilisk. The epistolist should be drafting that for her to review. That's what the epistolist should be doing. The epistolist, if the basilisk wants a letter to go out to the Constitute Bachelor about an event coming up, the epistolist should be the one drafting that in the direction of the basilisk. So anyone seeking this position really should be not afraid to write, not afraid, should really make sure they can understand how to communicate on behalf of the basilisk, because you never know when the basilisk may tap that. So right now, Eric, I don't know if you've asked Alicia to do this for you or not. I know I didn't ask the epistles when I was a basilisk, but that doesn't mean that anyone seeking that a future basilisk may. And so I just want to make sure I touch on that so that if anyone's thinking about that, I don't want to ever hear someone say, well, that's the other basilisk didn't ask me to do that. It doesn't matter. It's in the job description, and a future basilisk may ask that. So, Eric, I don't know if you want to.
I had Alicia draft something for when we gave a donation somewhere or we were going to do something. So she has done that one time. But like you said, in this age of technology, it hasn't been a significant need. But she has our official chapter letterhead in case she needs to draft anything. And she's available for that.
Awesome. Okay. So that's the epistles. But I will tell you the main thing is you have the keeper of our mailbox. So you have to keep our mailbox key, and you should be checking it twice a week. Why? Let me tell you an example of why that role is so important. Sorors like to mail their chapter dues to the PO box. And in the past, especially over the summer months, some folks' checks would just sit. I think, Erica, you was one for a while where your check sat in the PO box, and by the time it made its way to Tamiokas, the bank had canceled that person's check.
Absolutely.
It got deposited. So that's why the epistolist is someone who has to be, be readily available to check that mailbox. Now, I'm not saying we can dictate when you check it, but you should be checking it at least twice a week per our standards of operation and procedures.
And most importantly, once they check it, they need to get the correspondence to whoever needs to get it. So it can't sit in the epistolist's hand either.
Exactly. So that means you check it on Saturday, open it, see what's in there, because it may be something that needs to get the basilisk's attention by Monday. Not, well, I'll see her next Saturday. So it's oftentimes it does require you to be that person to
be very proactive and not reactive, you know. And I mean, it is also should have a level of discernment. And so I think if you know you're the Pistolers and you know we have BIJ coming up, you should be checking the mailbox. You should be checking when stuff comes in. Or if you know we're looking for scholarship applications, the scholarship chairman shouldn't be asking you, have you checked the mailbox? Because you know we should be expecting a higher volume of correspondence. So it does require some active participation and active leadership on behalf of that person serving as a pistolist. All right. Pecunious grammatis and the anti-pecunious grammatis, these are the financial secretary of the chapter. That means they're the receiver of money. The pecunious grammatis is just like the tamiokas. It's a 12-month job. There's no such thing as 10 months out the year, because if South Day don't make it looks up and have a party in July, who's going to take the money? Somebody got to be available to take the money. The pecunious grammatis and the tamiokas have to also stay in constant communication with committee chairmen, fundraising chairmen, to make sure that they are physically present. Now, the bylaws and the standard operation procedures say you must be at chapter meeting and executive committee to take money. And that's why we created an anti as a backup just in case. But that is where people are supposed to bring money. But now we have new ways of receiving money. We have it electronically through our PayPal. We have the Square now. But we also have the traditional form of bringing money to the chapter. The pecunious grammatis is also supposed to provide receipts for chapter members to reflect their payments and also keep track of people's dues and how much they owe, because the pecunious grammatis report goes to the tamiokas to determine when they pay the dues or not. So this person also must be organized, must pay attention to detail, thank you, Erica. Pay attention to detail, be very organized, because you have to keep track of, there's been times where we have had to do an audit because someone couldn't find a payment. And previous pecunious grammatis, I think Ravonda had to go back and look through envelopes to track because someone disputed a balance. And so that person has to be very organized and keep accurate records from a financial perspective. So, we have our secretary keeping accurate minutes, but this is the financial secretary, and they're keeping accurate receipt of money. And we all know that's very important because SARS want to show that they actually pay whatever they need to pay, whether it's an assessment, membership, registration to go to the retreat, or even their chapter dues. The pecunious grammatis is also bonded because she's receiving money. And so we have bond insurance to protect just in case something happens, right? Somebody break into the Pine Hills while we're in a meeting and rob us all, we got to be bonded. They take away with our money. Because some November meeting, it's easily $8,000 to $10,000 back there. And so that we are bonded to protect us because things do happen. Any questions before I go on to the Ivy Leaf Reporter? Oh, it's 9:16. Let me move a little. I might be getting a little long-winded. So the Ivy Leaf Reporter, we all know, is the chairman of our Public Relations Committee and is the person who is responsible for communicating chapter activities to the public. The Ivy Leaf Reporter is also supposed to communicate positive achievements of our members and to also present a positive image of our chapter. They're responsible for drafting flyers, press releases, articles for our Ivy Leaf for our national publication, which is the Ivy Leaf. We also would like for the Ivy Leaf Reporter to kind of cultivate media relationships so that we can kind of get our announcements or get some free marketing so that the week ask Monica May to give us a shout out on the radio by our upcoming event. Of course, all flyers, press releases have to be reviewed by our bachelors, but it's the responsibility of the Ivy Leaf Reporter to facilitate the creation of any flyers, making sure, and Bernita, that's a good question we asked earlier. There is a training on being an effective Ivy Leaf Reporter as well as handling public relations and marketing for chapters. And those are workshops I offer at the regional conference and at Boulay and Leadership. So anyone interested, if you, for example, the Ivy Leaf Reporter also now oversees our Instagram account, our Facebook page, because we have so many platforms now to share with the public. And so I think a good skill to have is someone who has a marketing background, someone who is familiar with promoting, who, even if you just like to be on Facebook, if you, and a good way to get your feet wet is to get on that committee, the public relations committee or the publicity committee, because that's a very active committee right now. If you're good with social media content, creating a calendar, and yes, Vernita, this is different from the technology person and committee. You are absolutely right. So the technology committee is a separate committee, and they have a separate chairman. And so the Ivy Leaf reporter is an elected position the newsletter, that's something that is created to help with the bachelor's. Now, the technology person helps make sure we have effective technology platforms to deliver that. But public relations oversees flyers, the content, and how we market our parties or our events. That's what the Ivy Leaf reporter is responsible for. And that's good because we have Jen, who is the Ivy Leaf reporter, but she also serves on the technology committee. That is someone who should serve on technology. They don't have to be the chairman, but they should serve. The chairman of the technology is Celestia Taylor. But Jen has a marketing background, and so she's been very helpful in bringing her skill set to that role, because she could talk about, how we should utilize Facebook metrics to see how we're doing. Are we targeting the right audience? Should we be paying for extra Facebook posts? All those different things to make sure, or even when we post on Facebook, how often should we be making posts? She makes sure that we are releasing things timely. And so if you think we've been doing a good job on social media, let Jen know that she's doing a great job with her committee. But everything from our impact days yesterday to breast cancer awareness, all those different things comes from the leadership of our Ivy Leaf reporter, who also chairs publicity. And that is a one-year term, and that will be up this November. I have received a candidate application for that. All right, the next four before we head, because I want to make sure we respect for your time. Parliamentarian, that's an appointed position. That person does not have a voice. That person is there upon the request of the bachelor to provide guidance as far as the running of our meeting. The parliamentarian should have a better knowledge of Robert's rules probably than anybody in the room, to make sure that she's advising the bachelors on how the meeting should be run, whether the motion is correct, whether we should get a secondary motions, all these other motions, that parliamentarian. And they actually have workshops on Robert's rules. The parliamentarian also chairs the bylaws committee, and so they oversee any bylaw request changes as well as the proper changes to our bylaws and go through that process. The parliamentarian should not vote. They're not supposed to vote in chapter meetings. Again, they are there as the voice to the bachelors to make sure things are running correctly. If the parliamentarian has an opinion, she should step down before she states her opinion, because the parliamentarian is supposed to be neutral. So I would say if you're ever interested in being recognized by future bachelors and be appointed, attend those trainings. Attend the various trainings at the regional conference on effective chapter, Robert's rules or running a chapter meeting. All those different things are good ways to get your feet wet when it comes to being a parliamentarian. Because you never know until there's a problem that you really need to have a knowledge of parliamentarian. And it's usually a difficult motion or difficult discussion. Then we have our historian, which is also a one-year term. The historian is to keep the permanent history of our chapter. That includes any narratives, pictures, media coverage. She's supposed to work with the Ivy Leaf reporter to make sure that we're providing information. She also works with pretty much all of our committees, especially the archives committee, to make sure we're capturing our history. We want to make sure that we do our next 10 years. When we're 20 years down the road, have we kept an accurate record of what Psi Theta Omega has done, what awards we've received at the regional conference, who's attended what meetings, to the success of various events. We have one draft, or one version of our history book. That was when I was bachelor, so it may be time for another one. Now that we're 10 years, because we've actually had 4 years of a whole other term, and we're going to a fifth year. So 5 years where we have not captured in a book of the history of Psi Theta Omega. But that person, so it's kind of like the same thing with our sorority. We want to capture what's happening with Psi Theta Omega over the years to capture our history. Thankfully, we are a young chapter, but we're going to look at one thing, we're not going to be able to say it anymore. So we want to make sure we have good practices. And so the historian is the person who's supposed to lead that. They chair the historian committee, and they're supposed to lead our efforts to make sure we are keeping a permanent history of our chapter's success and our activities. The archivist is the duty to keep our chapter property and to maintain our chapter storage. The archivist is a 2-year term. Okay, so let me say it again. So the archivist, and I need to make an error, the archivist is not up for election, so ignore that little asterisk. It's a 2-year term, and there are various archival trainings at the regional conference on the archivist, and there's several resources on the corporate website on integrating the archive into chapter operations, and there's a handbook for chapter implementation and other resources on how to make sure you properly archive documents and things in your chapter storage. The archivist keeps the key, and as you see emails, the archivist communicates to the chapter if anyone needs something out of the storage, but she's supposed to create an effective check-in or just type of procedures so we can keep track of who's requesting things out of the storage. Because you don't realize when something's missing until it's time for it and you don't have it. You don't know where it's at, how to find it. And so it's a big job for the archivist to document, record what's in that storage, and to keep track and have an inventory of what's there, who last checked it out, and to make sure that it makes its way back. Because if not, it could easily get, say a Sarah moves away and forgets to give us whatever she borrowed, or she gets robbed. I mean, I remember when Sarah Tiffany Carrot Hughes was bachelor's, and Dad had just handed her over all of her documents, and someone broke into her car. And so it's just that easy we can lose a good year of our history of our chapter. And so the archivist is the person who oversees that to make sure that we have a clean storage and that we're keeping record and we're actually keeping the documents and things that Psi Theta Omega owns. The chaplain. Let me stop. Are there any questions? All right. So the chaplain, of course, is to lead invocations, prayers, and benedictions. She is to provide that spiritual guidance and comfort to the chapter and its members. You heard Erica mention earlier that the chaplain has been working with the Hodigas. She can work with the Hodigas on various things to make sure she's engaged with what's happening with our sorors. But the chaplain is supposed to be that spiritual that we need for the chapter, that person that can provide that spiritual calm. And if we need that one scripture, she's the one that leads the invocation of prayer in the beginning of our meetings. And that sets the tone where we want to go for the chapter and for our meetings. So that's the role of the chaplain. That is a 1-year term, and that's up in November. Also, 2 other opportunities to be elected is a nominating committee and the audit committee. The nominating committee, they work through the nominating process for the chapter to make sure that we have candidates for SAR of the year and for upcoming elections of the chapter. And then the audit committee is 5 members of both nominating and audit. The audit committee oversees the internal and external audit of our chapter finances. So any questions? All right. So let me talk about the nominating and elections process. So I just went over for you all the various positions that's available in our chapter. And as you can see, we all have a part to play, whether we're on that committee that supports that officer. And so you may or may not be elected in that position, but say you serve on the hospitality committee, you are helping support the role of the Hodigas. Or if you serve on public relations or publicity committee, you're supporting the role of the Ivy Leaf reporter. Because at the end of the day, all those positions are important for the sake of Psi Theta Omega to function properly. So let me go over the nominating and elections process. So the nominating committee timeline, June and September, we've announced the candidate packets were available and to call for potential candidates. And if you have not submitted your application and you're interested, please submit them to me. But remember, go back and do your self-evaluation. Make sure you meet the qualifications and see if this is the role for you. October, nominating committee will present the slate of officers, and then we will also accept nominations from the floor if we have not received any candidate applications. In November, we will conduct elections. Also in November is when we open the floor for candidates to give a 3-minute speech to the chapter. It is not required, but it is available if those candidates are interested in sharing with the chapter their vision and what they plan to do in the role that they're seeking. But again, it's not required, but it is 3 minutes, and it will be available to any candidate that wants to do that in the November meeting. The elections are held in November, and in December we install officers. For anyone seeking elected office in the chapter, your dues must be paid in December, or you will not be installed. So technically, they must be paid before the bachelor's calls for the installation ritual. And if you have not paid, it's imperative that you get with the bachelor's to tell her what's going on. I think that is the appropriate thing to do. It is protocol. It is the right thing to notify the bachelor's. One of the embarrassing things is to find out someone was installed but has not fulfilled their obligation per the bylaws to pay their dues. So again, we go back to being leaders and having integrity and wanting to lead by example. And if members are, leaders should be paying their dues on time before we get members to pay their dues on time. So again, if you are interested in seeking office, remember your dues must be paid by the time you're installed in November. All right. I just mentioned that candidates are allocated 3 minutes for candidate speeches during the November chapter meeting. We also have allowed candidates to share one printed campaign brochure to chapter members. Candidates have not been mailing them. They are allowed to send the campaign material or flyer, whatever you want, via electronic means to communicate your message. It depends. It's all up to you. It's not required. It's not a mandate. It's just something that's available if you want to create some type of electronic communication, if you want to print something. Any questions before I move on to the campaigning process? Okay, let's talk about available resources again. These are documents, manuals, books you should be familiar with. So again, Robert's Rules of Order. I encourage anyone on the call to have your own Robert's Rules of Order. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. And nowadays, you can go on Amazon and it'll be at your door within 2 days. Everyone has a copy of our international bylaws and aesthetic procedures, but you should also have a copy of the chapter bylaws and standard operating procedures that should always be with you as an officer in the chapter or seeking office in the chapter. The corporate office has a book called So Now You're Elected. It's actually it's a small booklet. It costs about $5 to $8. It kind of goes through and provides more detail about the different positions within the sorority. It kind of is like, I would call it a to-go-to guide to keep at your disposal if you have any questions about various positions. That goes into more detail than what our bylaws will have. There's a financial fitness document on the corporate website that you can purchase. The protocol manual is on the website that you can purchase, or when you go to a regional conference, all of these guides and documents are available for purchase. But these are resources that I think are important. Also, I encourage you to go to regional conference, BULE, and other leadership conferences. We oftentimes in South Bay we will talk about workshops that you should attend before that event actually comes up. But look for recommended workshops and the certifications that are that apply to your position you're seeking. So whether it's the financial certification, the bachelor's certification, some good workshops, protocol, sorority finances, foundation 101, chapter operations, etc. These are workshops, are good examples that you should be attending. And again, the workshop should be associated with the position a SAR is seeking to serve. Typically, the workshop will have a description, and you'll know who's the targeted audience and how you can get further knowledge and information about the position you are seeking. All right, so the question I want to leave you with is this. If not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Any questions or concerns from participants? No questions? Well,
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you very much, Tiffany. You did an awesome job discussing everything, and I think that anyone that participated or that reviews this at a later point should feel much more informed. Once this is recorded and I have the link, I think I'm going to send it out maybe in the remind text so that it can be easily accessed as we continue to recruit people for those available positions.
Gotcha.
So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Madam Bachelors, and thank you, Renita, for the kind words. I hope it was helpful for people to kind of get a sense of what would be expected of them. The Leadership Committee is at your disposal if people have future questions. And again, this is not, it was hopeful that someone would, whether you are serving and want to serve now or later, that you can go ahead and get those questions answered for yourself. Just a head note, the next PTOU workshop will be tentatively January the 5th, 2019. Look for more further details in the November and the December chapter meeting. All right, if there are no other questions, make sure I'm doing this right. No other questions? I'm going to stop recording at this time.